He is the executive director of the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music. Bob Santelli, good morning and welcome to WDHA.
Happy to be here.
That's a fancy title you have there. I'm just a disc jockey.
If it's nothing else, it's long.
It is long, but it's very cool. And you've got something coming up in a few weeks, the symposium to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the release of Bruce Springsteen's The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. Tell our audience about that.
Well, the Springsteen Archives, we're in the 50th anniversary business because earlier this year, first week of January, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Bruce's Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. And of course, back in 1973, he released two albums, oddly enough. Greetings, of course, and then Wild Innocent, E Street Shuffle, which he did in late October, early November of 1973. So we had 700 people show up for that Greetings symposium. And it went so well, we look very much forward to doing Wild Innocent, E Street Shuffle, and it takes place on October 28th at Monmouth University, which is where the Bruce Springsteen Archives is located.
Why was Monmouth University where they chose to locate these archives?
Well, it's a long story as to how it originally got there, but I can tell you very quickly that Bruce's earliest fan base, a lot of it was from, at the time, Monmouth College. And I know that for a fact because I was there at the time. I went to school at Monmouth, and it was basically 3 streets away from Bruce wrote Born to Run. Many of his shows from Steel Mill and Bruce Springsteen Band were at Monmouth. So the fact that Monmouth understood the value of Bruce's archive staying in New Jersey, and the fact that Bruce wanted to be someplace close to home, Monmouth made the most sense.
Yeah, and you were an early fan of Bruce Springsteen's. What was it, Bob, that captivated you the most about him? Do you recall?
Oh yeah. It's funny. I had just moved down to the Jersey Shore from West New York, which is where I grew up in Hudson County. And I remember going to a coffee house in Red Bank. And I thought I knew a whole lot about music because I was able to go over the Village at the time, and I was pretty hip with the music I was listening to. I didn't think anybody down the shore listened to Tim Buckley. And I walk into this coffee house. I just joined a band down the shore. I was a guitar player, a musician. And lo and behold, there's this guy with long hair playing Tim Buckley. I couldn't believe it. And it was Bruce. It was the first time I actually heard him. But, I got to tell you, I'd seen Steel Mill, Bruce Springsteen Band. I've seen virtually all of his major bands, not his earliest, but his major ones. And right from the very beginning, you knew I wasn't a genius. You didn't have to be a genius to know he had the it factor. And boy, could he play, sing, and write. And if anyone was ever going to make it from Jersey from a rock and roll standpoint, it was going to be Bruce.
Not many artists can, scrutiny is probably the wrong word, but to do something like this symposium, not many artists can hold up to that kind of thing, Bob.
Yeah, this is not an academic one. We don't present papers. This is made up of musicians, journalists, music historians, journalists who I know and who have been writing about Bruce for a long time, producers, engineers. It's the whole gamut. And the idea is not to just, oh, wow, remember those days. It was really to bring context to these records. Some of us have been fans for 30, 40, 50 years, been listening to this music for that long. And now what our plan is to bring new context and, kind of invite you to go listen to that music again and search out the meaning for you personally, but also historically. These records were really important to Bruce's career and to where rock and roll was going, as you know, Jim, in the early 70s.
And the thing is about these two albums, at the time, they did not sell very well. And in fact, there was a pretty good chance that Bruce was going to be dropped by his record company back in those days.
That's right. Those two records did not sell. He lived and died by his live show. And if you were lucky enough to see his show in 74, 73, 74, 75, you became a convert because it was hard to walk away. Even today, of course, it's true. But back then, when he was playing as if his life depended on it, his professional life, it was incredible. Some of my most memorable Springsteen shows come from 1974, which is the tour that he was doing Wild Innocent, and he was writing Born to Run, because Born to Run, of course, would come out in 1975.
It's interesting that you talk about the approach to the live shows. I just had a guy on by the name of Michael Lombardi. Michael's from South Jersey, was a NFL general manager, and has 3 Super Bowl rings to his credit. He is a massive Bruce Springsteen fan, and he talked about seeing Bruce for the first time, I think it was 1975, and hearing and watching Bruce play Born to Run. And then he said he saw him just a couple of years ago. He said it was the same energy all these years later, as if it was the first time he was singing it to an audience.
I don't know where he gets it from. I mean, he's in good shape. Unfortunately, he's ill now, and I'm sure he's going to get better. But look, I think he has this rock and roll blood. It just goes through his veins. He's committed to it. The band's committed to it. And I don't think Bruce Springsteen has ever phoned in a show. I mean, any time I've seen him hundreds of times over the course of 40, 50 years. And I've never seen it as a journalist, as a critic, as a fan. I just never seen it. And I look up to him as an artist who remains true to his craft and has a commitment to his audience that is like none other.
Bob Santelli is with us this morning. He's the executive director of the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music, which sounds almost like one of those presidential libraries,
Well, good. I like you thinking that way. No, it's true. It's a fancy title. What the heck? But the bottom line is we're trying to do good work down there. The idea was always, Jim, is to keep Springsteen's papers, archives, legacy in New Jersey, because as you know, as well as all your fans, Bruce is synonymous with New Jersey, right? Unlike no other artist. So if his papers were going to go anywhere, they had to be within the confines of the boundaries of New Jersey. And we're fortunate that Monmouth University stepped up. And it's a great and growing archives. And don't forget, there's also another aspect to it, the Center for American Music. And that was Bruce's idea, essentially, because, when I approached him about this, he said, quite honestly, I'm just a chapter in a larger American story. I don't need all this kind of attention. Tell the bigger story of America. I said, you're right. Great. We will. And so we went home and broadened the concept to include the Center for American Music, which allows us to do lots of things under the umbrella of American music. So Bruce is a big part of that, but it's not the only thing that we deal with at the center now. We're expanding, and in the next couple of years or so, you'll see proof of that.
He may be just a chapter, but it was a pretty thick chapter, I think. The symposium to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the release of The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle at Monmouth University on October 28th of this year. One of the things that's come out in this current tour that he's been on, is the finality of things. And he talks a lot about George Thies, and a lot of like the Letter to You. That album seemed like a goodbye in many sense, not to his audience, but to different phases of his life, to different people in his life. And Bob, I went back to a lot of his earlier songs, and I couldn't get over the number of songs that talked about getting older, songs that he was writing in his mid-20s. I was floored by that. What kid at 24 talks about getting older?
Yeah. You at 24, you think you live forever, right?
Yeah.
I think that comes probably from a working class background, when things are finite. It's not just peaches and cream. You got to earn what you get. And I think in particular with George Thies, and George was a good friend of mine, and we were very lucky at the Springsteen Archives to do a significant oral history with George just a few months before he passed. And, when Bruce thinks about finality, you have to consider, as he says, his first band, he's the only survivor. His second band, Earth and Child, his second and third bands, only survivor. So it's not just the Castiles with George, it's the first 3 bands. That kind of makes you think twice when you look in the mirror. I think you're very blessed. You feel that you're alive and well, and that you are the last man standing. I think Bruce has a responsibility. I think he believes this as well, to carry on the tradition that some of the players that he basically broke in with, is carried. And we've done, I think, a real good job at the archives, making sure that we have remnants and relics and interviews, etc., with those band members from Bruce's first couple of bands that are now deceased.
You referenced blue collar just a few minutes ago, and that aspect of Bruce's image has taken a pretty large hit recently, what with dynamic ticket pricing and that sort of thing. And I think, for a lot of fans, maybe casually or otherwise, they look back and they think, well, by the river, he probably had made enough money if he was smart with it, but he could be comfortable for the rest of his life. Who knows what comfortable is for one person? It's always amazed me, Bob, that we as a society feel that it's within our right to tell a musician or an actor or such how much money they should be able to make.
Right.
I can't get over that. Like, we feel it's within our right. He's already made enough money. What does he need more for?
Yeah. Look, first of all, people who complain about that have to understand this is a new world. It's the 21st century music business. Fans who think all of that money is going to in Bruce's pocket are very naive. It is costly to put on a tour these days. If you look at other prices from other artists, they're similar, or even more in many regards. It's the cost of doing business. So to think that Bruce is being greedy, to think that he's being selfish and wanting all of this money for himself, that's just not true. It's just not. And I'm not here to defend him on any regards. I just know, as a person who's been in the music business his whole life, that this is the way the business is now. It's costly. And if you just go backstage or after a tour's over and see all those tractor trailer trucks leaving, all of those people that have to be fed, paid, insured, gas, trucks, it adds up. And that is why those prices are what they are. It's not like he's fattening his wallet. It's not that at all.
I have a friend who is producing the Mickey Dolenz shows that he's doing, and he did the Mike and Mickey show a while ago, and somebody said, why are the shirts and the sweatshirts so expensive? And he came back with, well, Mickey doesn't own the Monkeys logo, so he's got to pay to use that. And he went down this big old laundry list. Yeah, the sweatshirt itself might only be $7.99, but when you tack on the licensing for the logo, and this person's got to be paid, and when I'm like, oh my goodness, it's no wonder it's so expensive.
Exactly. And that's it. And of course, with basically hardly any money coming in from CD sales or music sales, the merch has really become that. And so merch has gotten higher. There's no question about it. The cost of doing business with merchandise has gotten higher. But I have to say, as a fan, it's very sad, because you and I know we would go to shows $5, $6 a pop. I'd go to, when I was 18, 19 years old, I probably went to 15 or 20 shows over the course of a summer. I was going all the time, so I could afford it, right? Now, of course, kids hopefully can go to one festival. Fortunately, I get to see a lot of bands at a festival, but to think you can go to that many shows, it's impossible unless you're absolutely and independently wealthy.
Bob Santelli is my guest this morning at 105.5 WDHA. We're talking Bruce Springsteen. One of the other things that's come up recently is, and there was an article that came out a couple of weeks ago, spontaneity and the amnesia of Springsteen fans. And the article was talking about how fans are going to multiple shows and they're seeing the same set for the most part. Maybe there's a song different here or there, and they're upset about it. And I'm thinking, well, wait a second. I remember seeing the Tunnel of Love Express tour in Los Angeles, and I saw it here on the East Coast. It's pretty much the same show. There were one or two differences, but the intro was identical. It was like it was scripted out. This is nothing new. I don't know why people are so upset about it. This is nothing new for Bruce Springsteen.
Well, I go back in time, and I think there was a time when every show had its own identity, that he would simply decide to do this or do that, sometimes spur the moment, sometimes literally on stage, which is why if you ever see a Springsteen concert and you can concentrate on Max Weinberg, watch his eyes. He never leaves Bruce, because he doesn't know what Bruce is going to do to change things in a second. But there was a time when there was this great sense of mystery as to what he would play on a particular night. I think part of the reason is why this is that there's a lot of rehearsing and there's a lot of time that goes into being able to put on a show that's magical and mysterious every single night, right? And so the guys are older, they're all over the place. The ability to jam endless nights before you go out on tour and learn all these songs, that's not the case so much anymore. So I can understand why fans are a little disappointed. Quite honestly, I'm a little disappointed too. I've seen 6 or 7 shows on this, and there's been some change. But for the most part, I, like other fans, I'd like to see some more mystery and surprise in the shows, and I think you'll see that as the band goes on. I mean, this tour, I hope, is going to go much longer than everyone thinks, and if that is the case, I think you're going to see more variety than you would have seen in the first part.
You mentioned Weinberg, and I remember one of the shows, and it might have been on Tunnel of Love Express tour, where I watched Max, and I had a chance to talk to him shortly after that, and he said to me there was one night where Bruce just counted off, and he said, we had no idea what it was, but based on the count that Bruce had given, at least Max knew the kind of beat that he had to come up with.
That's, Max tells some great stories because he knows, like all drummers know, man, you are the foundation of that band and that song that's being played. You screw it up and the whole band goes south, right? Everything goes off the tracks. Max is such a perfectionist too. I mean, I almost spend as much time watching Max on stage as I do Bruce and the rest of the band. He's a good friend of mine, and I've known him a long time. We've done a book together as well, so I know how he operates. But I do know that he is not on his game, if he is not paying attention full on, there could come a time when he misses cue, and oh boy.
Bob Santelli is with us this morning here at 105.5 WDHA, the symposium to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the release of The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shovel, coming to Monmouth University on October 28th. There's some other things. You kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago. There's some other things coming. What can you tell us?
Yeah, we're going to be doing a number of programs, both in New Jersey and beyond, actually, that broaden our palette, meaning there'll be some things certainly on Bruce, but more things on American music. We did a few things this year on the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I can tell you that next year, as you know, is the 60th anniversary of the Beatles coming to America. We're going to be doing something with the Beatles. It's also the year of the British invasion, right? We're going to be doing something on the British invasion. So my hope is that I do 2 essential things with these programs. Number one is reconnect with fans and give them new context, new energy, new reasons to think about what had happened in the past, or go back to the records that they once loved, and with a renewed sense of interest. And number 2, equally important, maybe even a little bit more, I'm on a college campus, and there's a mission that I adhere myself to make sure that younger kids today, kids who, whose parents, even grandparents, turned them on to the Beatles or to Bruce, that they get the information they need to appreciate. They don't have to become fans. I'm not forcing that by any means, but they appreciate this great American music tradition that we have and understand Bruce's role in it.
Well, looking forward to what you do on 1964, because a lot of those 3-minute records that he learned more from than sitting in a classroom were the records from the Beatles and that 64 British invasion. Bob, for DHA listeners who want more information about this symposium coming up on October 28th, where do they go?
They can go to the Bruce Springsteen Archives, our website. Springsteen Archives is a good Springsteen.net is a good place. And we'll be basically talking. You'll see a few things in the paper as we make some more announcements as we go along here. And thank you, Jim, for your interest. And I got to tell you, it's great to see you again and talk to you. We go back a long ways. I always listen to you on the radio, and I'm glad you're still at it.
Still at it, indeed. Bob, thank you so much for your time. Great to catch up with you as well.
Take care.